We're going to take a peek inside here. Try not to fog the camera up. This one here is just about ready to boil. And this one here has started to a slow rolling boil. We're going to put the cover back on. We're going to turn this one down to a simmer. This one too is going to be boiling here shortly. We'll turn it down to a simmer, and when that happens, we're going to time it for 30 minutes and let these big pots of liqueur simmer to try to get all the essence out of the bananas that we can. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to go back down to our primary fermenter, measure out the amount of sugar that we need, and go ahead and place it in. Alright, we went and checked on the liqueur. It's about ready to be in a boil, which will be turned down to a simmer for a 30-minute simmer. In the meantime, now we're going to use our time wisely, and because we're making 6.5 gallons, we're going to need 14.625 pounds of sugar that go in this bad boy here. So, using our equivalent measurement that 2 cups roughly equals 16 ounces or 1 pound of sugar, we're going to go ahead and put the whole 10-pound bag, this one 10-pound bag, in the primary, and then we're going to take the second 10-pound bag of sugar that we've got here, and we're going to take 10 cups out of that and add to that. Now that's not precise, but one thing I've noticed about winemaking, it's very similar to welding or steelworking, and that is that you can make a mistake and kind of cover it up. You have to almost work hard to ruin a batch of wine. I have in the past, when I was first starting winemaking, I've actually got too much sugar when I'm trying to start my primary ferment, and what happens then is it's very difficult to get the yeast to start. Since then I've learned a few techniques to learn how to tame the wild yeast, so to say, but the best thing to do is to not overkill on sugar right off the bat. Once you have a strong yeast body in your wine, you can always throw some more sugar in there afterward to bring your alcohol content up, but for the most part this will be fairly accurate, and so that's what we're going to go ahead and do. I'm going to leave the grocery bag around the sugar here, because when you notice you ever open up these bags of sugar, sometimes what happens is they kind of spill some sugar out on the ground, so that gets trapped in the folds of the bag. I've gotten wise to that by making messes, so we'll just try to avoid that as much as we can. Okay, we got this one 10-pound bag open. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully, once again without fluffing my clothing or my hair, my hat, anything over the primary, we're going to go ahead and take this cover off and dump 10 pounds of sugar in. Here, I'll lift the bag free of that grocery bag. Just go ahead and dump her on in. And there's 10 pounds. And next we're going to open the next 10-pound bag and put 10 cups to get our roughly equivalent, it's a fairly rough measurement but it'll work, a fairly rough measurement of 14.625 pounds of sugar. Now I suppose what one could do if you had a small scale, you can go ahead and measure that out. I just didn't have one immediately accessible, so I'm going to do it this way. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And there we have approximately 14.625 pounds of sugar in our primary fermenter. One thing that you're going to have at home if you decide to go ahead and make banana wine you won't have this problem of equivalent measurements quite as much. Now I have two different books, one wine book and one cookbook, that give you equivalent measurements for sugar. The wine book says 2 1/4 cups of sugar is equivalent to a pound roughly, and the cookbook says that 2 cups is equivalent to 1 pound of sugar. Now, it doesn't seem like a whole bunch of difference, but if you average that over when you're making a 6.5 gallon batch of wine, that differs by a combined 3.5 cups of disparity between those two equivalencies. And I'm here to tell you that when you take your specific gravity measurements ultimately on your wine, this will play against you in that factor. So we'll go conservative. We went with the 2 cups going to a 1 pound measurement system. And because I said once you get your yeast going, you can always add more if you'd like. Because getting an alcohol percentage is only a rough art as well. It's not a completely exact science either. I like to make my wine around 14% alcohol level, which is quite high actually, but what it always provides you is something that will never spoil. Your product will never spoil and has a long shelf life. It is a little bit of a myth that with age wine gets better, because you hear of stories that everybody's got an uncle that makes wine or something, and they talk about 30 years ago they made dandelion wine, and you know what, I opened a bottle of it and oh my goodness, it gave my tongue a good shaking. It was pretty bad. Well, most light colored wines only have about a 2-year shelf life anyway, and darks should have 5-year shelf life roughly, if they're done right. But all wine should have 10% minimum alcohol level, and that will ensure that you have a good shelf life. I like to go 14%. I have no doubts in mine. Here we are again back at the stove, and we're going to take a peek into this second pot, and there you see we do have a rolling boil in here as well that had just started. So what we're going to do is go ahead and put the cover back on that and turn that to a simmer, set a 30-minute timer, and we'll come back to this after that. Here we have acid blend. Now we're going to add the acid blend to the primary fermenter. 6.5 tablespoons is what we're going to end up needing to make this equivalent for a 1 gallon batch multiplied by 6.5 times. So 6.5 tablespoons of acid blend coming up. We'll set our cover aside here. One, 2, 3, and we're starting to run out here. And since we ran out, we're going to make our own acid blend. Acid blend contains food grade citric, malic, and tartaric acid. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make, we're going to take some citric acid here and some ascorbic acid, and we're just going to add it to it together. This will be number 4, right? 4. That'll be 6.5. Alright, now we need 1.625 teaspoons of wine tannin. Tannin is a dark brown colored type of powder, and it's actually derived from grape skins. So when you have like red grapes, that dark color is where tannin is hiding in. And so we're going to put just a little bit less than a half a tablespoon of tannin in here. And tannin, that's about right there. Tannin gives you the pucker in wine, so that taste, that kind of lip smacking, cheek twisting pucker in wine is created by tannin. So this type of wine is a low tannin wine. We don't have anything like grapes going into it so much, so therefore we need some tannin to add to it. Next ingredient is yeast nutrient. What this is going to do is give those little critters something to gnaw on. This contains food grade urea and ammonium phosphate. Sound delicious? Well, they think so. Anyway, we're going to put in 2 tablespoons, and for this amount, we'll have just the second tablespoon is going to be heaping one. As you can see, this looks like granulations. It looks like the stuff that you get in desiccant packets, except this one you can eat. Alright, there's our heaping one. And now we'll get about an even one. Alright, the final ingredient that's going to go into our primary fermenter before we wait for the liqueur to go on top is grape concentrate. Now you can either use light chopped raisins, which I have used before, or grape concentrate. Now the grape concentrate that the recipe is calling for is not old white grape juice concentrate that you see here that I'm holding. There's actually in most wine or beer stores, or you can order online, it comes in a bottle, and the concentrate is very, very expensive. And so me being, the pinch penny that I am, and I'm sure that you also don't want to, spend money where you don't have to, I have discovered that using raisins or actual white grape juice concentrate will work well enough. Now, the purpose of putting this white grapes in the form of raisins or grape concentrate in this wine is to give it body. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give this stuff some body now, and it calls for 4 ounces of grape concentrate for this recipe for a gallon. We're going to times that by 6.5 and come up with about 26 ounces of grape concentrate. So here we go. In case you didn't notice, they're jipping you on the label. This used to be 12-ounce container of juice concentrate. It no longer is. It says 11.5. So we're going to keep that also in mind. Open these babies up. In she goes. Open the lid. One of them in. There's 2 of them. And now that we have 23 ounces, we're going to use another 3 ounces, so I will measure this roughly. And we have a little measuring cup here. 2 ounces of it. And 1 more ounce. And there we have it. All the ingredients are in the primary fermenter. Now we're just standing by for the liqueur, which is on the stove simmering right now. Alright, well here what we're doing is, right before we put this thing to primary ferment, we're actually making a yeast starter. Because we're making a 6.5 gallon batch, it's recommended to do this rather than just throwing your packet of yeast into the wine to get it going. You can actually greatly multiply the number of yeast cells by making a starter. So that's what I recommend if you're making 5 gallon or greater batches or something like that, or even 3 gallon, you should probably make a starter. First thing in a starter is 2 cups of pretty warm water. You don't want it to be past 130 degrees, or even 100 degrees is probably a little bit much, but right around there is fine. People recommend that 90 degrees and greater is too much for yeast. I have found to the contrary that yeast likes to live in very warm climates. So I like to use 90, 100, 110 degree water. It cools off fast. We're going to put just a half teaspoon or so of nutrient in here, and that is not even worth measuring, so I'm just going to give it a shake. Give it a little bit in there. It doesn't hurt if you get a little bit more. You'll just have more aggressive yeast. It likes that. Next ingredient on your starter is 2 tablespoons of sugar. So that's what we're going to give it. 2 tablespoons of sugar. 1. And 2. The last ingredient on a starter is citric acid. So it says a 1/4 teaspoon. That's just another shake also. We're making such huge batches of this stuff, it's fine. and in goes the yeast. If you want to take a look at, I don't know if you can get that with the camera, what these critters look like. It depends on the breed of yeast, the strain of it. They look kind of like little tubey grains, actually. So we'll pour that in. Then I'm going to using a clean fork, I'm going to stir that all together. Then, we're not going to cover it with the actual cover. We're going to take a piece of paper towel, put over it, and loosely put on the top so that it can have access to the air. And then we're going to put it somewhere warm so it can stay warm. And there's a yeast starter for you. If you look up into the camera, you can see the yeast cells and are just already starting to eat up that nutrient, and they're starting to like thrive. You're going to see yeast, when it actually gets active, is going to almost give a boiling effect. It's pretty neat to watch.